Hello, hello. It's always the question like, does the microphone automatically unmute? But no, it doesn't. So I had to do it myself. That's why the little awkward pause was there. But here we are. My friends, how are we doing? Brandon, Vlad, Sean, it's so good to see you all. Actually, Brandon, I've seen enough of you today because you were earlier on for the .NET MAUI community stand-up as well.
Oh goodness, I feel like I've been doing the media circuit lately.
Yeah.
I joined Teleric's Snorkeling with Maui Day, where we talked about Maui for 4 hours straight on a
Yep.
live stream, and then this morning joined the .NET Maui Community Stand Up. So their stand up,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
here we are.
Here we are. And I think it was all about the toolkits as well, right? I saw the piece from Telerik as well. I saw it a little bit earlier, just bits and pieces, but it was a lot of .NET MAUI Community Toolkit love, so that is amazing.
All toolkit all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Vlad, how are you doing?
Hello, I am fine. Life is going its usual way. Yeah, I'm
Well,
glad to be
that's
here 8 months. Yeah.
in your case, that's something very good, I would say. So let's hope it stays that way. Sean, you were also on the Telerik account live stream, I think. So what were you actually talking about? Probably something with animations, that kind of stuff.
Precisely that. Yes, it was showing off what the possibilities are within Xamarin. Oh, not Xamarin. God, .NET MAUI.
Yeah.
Whoops.
I keep doing that as well. Xamarin. Oh no, it's not that. I keep garbling up all the names. So I'm glad whenever we get past the release, and the release is going to happen this month, allegedly. So let's see. Because we're now in May, another month has passed. So whenever we are here for next month, then hopefully we can say, yay, it all launched and the toolkit launched and everything launched. So that's going to be amazing. But before that, we have a lot of updating to do. And actually, we launched a couple of things for the past month as well. We have a release of the Xamarin Community Toolkit. So this is, I don't know why I'm seeing this, Brandon, the Xamarin Community Toolkit. So I actually meant to say Xamarin right now, which brings us to version 202. I must be very honest. I'm not really sure what's in there. I think we mostly released it because that one, the MAUI Compat version, is now also compatible with .NET MAUI RC2, right? Yes. See, and Mike's bug fix. Well, I don't know who Mike is, but he did a great job. No, so this is basically just a minor release for the Xamarin Community Toolkit, which has a bug fix by Mike from the community, because it's the community toolkit still. So thank you so much, Mike, from this place right here. And mostly this was a release to make it compatible, the MAUI Compat version with .NET MAUI RC2. Because if you've been following us, which you should have, then you know that we have the Xamarin Community Toolkit, which will stay with Xamarin Forms. We have the Xamarin Community Toolkit MAUI Compat, which will be everything in the Xamarin Community Toolkit, but now compatible with .NET MAUI, kind of like with the compatibility layer. So, you can use it if you really need to, but you actually shouldn't really want to. And then we have the .NET MAUI Community Toolkit, which is going to be really for .NET MAUI breaking changes. Not everything is implemented yet that was in the Xamarin Community Toolkit. So options for everyone, basically. We did this release. It's out there right now. Go use it. Go download it. Let us know what you think. But we didn't stop there because, like I said, we, as in the .NET MAUI team in this case, we released Release Candidate 2. They're kind of like following up more quickly now. We had RC1, then a week and a half later, we had RC2, and RC3 is, I think, coming up pretty soon, working up to GA. And now we have RC2, so we needed to update our .NET MAUI Community Toolkit as well for the RC2 bits to make it compatible. And while we were there, we also snuck in a couple of new bug fixes and new functionalities, because that is the nice people that we are. So what's actually in here? I'm trying to read it, but Brandon made it smaller now. So what's the XAML doc? So Sean has been doing great things, not just with the XAML docs that will help you with the IntelliSense inside of VS, but we also have like the documentation on docs.microsoft.com, and we're putting all the stuff in there. It's going pretty great. a little bug fix for a tab converter sample text updated to RC2 and drawing view. So did we actually mention that for the last time? Because I think things went pretty quickly there. The drawing view, I think for the last month's stand-up was kind of like almost there, but we merged it. We have a drawing view for iOS, Android, Windows, macOS, I assume. So we have it all.
Yep.
We have a drawing view, ladies and gentlemen. That's pretty amazing.
Shout out to Vlad. Thank you, Vlad.
Absolutely.
We even have fixes for it in this release.
And we even have fixes for it. So we had the drawing view. We already found bugs. You will never know about them because you didn't know. You will never know about them. It's going to be just amazing. So we have this new version that you should totally check out as well. Because like I said, at the end of the month, we're expecting .NET MAUI GA, and we've been following kind of like their release pattern as well. So, we're also working up to the .NET MAUI Community Toolkit, which is going to be GA as well. So, we're kind of like already bolted down on the APIs, trying to get in bug fixes, and already looking at the next version, which we're going to talk about later in this stand-up. But I think we covered everything about the releases right now. So unless someone else has to add something here, I want to kind of skip over to the discussions that we might have. No interruptions? Okay, good. And because we have a couple of discussions, and here we have one about the sample app releasing to the App Store and Google Play Store. So this is a fun one. We've had this a couple of times now for also the Xamarin Community Toolkit, also for this toolkit, because there is a couple of people who are coming in asking us like, hey, we have a sample app that could always use more work, but I think for the .NET MAUI Community Toolkit, it's actually pretty nice. So we have a sample app in the repository that will show you like all the features that we have, all the functionalities that we have. So you can check out in the repository A, how we've done it, and B, you can actually run it on your phone and or emulator or whatever and see how it behaves whenever you start playing with it. Now, people have been asking like, hey, it would be cool, if I want to demo something to my team, to, I don't know, someone else, it would be cool if I could just get the app, not have to compile the whole thing, just get the app from the store, show other people like, hey, this is amazing, you should use this as well. So that's kind of like the ask, and this person, Ghoul Def, I don't know what his real name is, brought it up also already in November last year. Gustavo, and he said like, hey, is it okay? Is it going to come to the app stores? If not, can I put it there with my personal account? And we kind of like have a whole discussion here with all kinds of reasons. It's been a while, so I don't know what I said, but I'm going to kind of assume that it's still the same opinion that I have now. Like, on the one hand, I would love to have it. If it's not that much off, I'm reading here, that much effort, not offer. But on the other hand, if we want to do this kind of like in a way that is sustainable, so if we want to put this on there. So that it's not dependent on one person's account, then there's costs. It's kind of like a hassle to get all the accounts on there, get an account for Android, for iOS. So there's a lot of stuff to consider here. That we need to push out the actual versions, do updates. Someone has to look into that all the time. So it's kind of like a big undertaking to actually do it for. Maybe a small gain, I feel. I'm not sure what we're actually, it's cool to have. On the other hand, it's kind of like, yeah, we're not expecting 1 million downloads here. So I don't know. That's kind of like where I'm coming from. But I would be curious to hear like what the other people. I see Vlad's name was originally at this discussion. So Vlad, do you have any ideas about this?
So the idea came to me after migrating our sample application to Flyout. And Shell, and because it's even now a default template of the .NET MAUI application, I also found this cute application developed by Microsoft. It's XAML control gallery, and I think we can implement something similar. And if it probably looks like this, it's probably ready for release somewhere in markets. So as you can see, it has a like what's new section with all new items added. It also contains, for example, some links to documentation, some examples, and probably we can implement something similar. We also can get feedbacks from the application directly and make our sample application more usable by our community. Also, it may help to create a documentation because usually documentation comes a bit later because the feature implemented. So when community member make a sample up, he will already write in some examples and docs, which can then migrate it to Microsoft Docs repository.
Yeah, I'd say it's certainly impressive. My my only concern is it almost feels like we need to bring out a maintainer to essentially do this full time, because that's a lot of work. They have a whole page for like releases and what's new, but I don't hate it. Which team did you say this was, Vlad?
I think I downloaded this application from Microsoft Store. So I think it's a sample application for WinUI controls.
Yeah, because what that I had is maybe Gerald and I can reach out internally to see just how they do it. Microsoft's got a lot of money, so it's totally possible that they literally have a team that just does this. But yeah, maybe there's some sort of scripting or CI/CD thing that they leverage. Because if that's the case, like if we had it in our CI pipeline where this would just do it automatically, then that'd be easy. But
that would definitely take away
right.
because that's like the biggest part of my concern as well. Like I would do it on our personal account as well, no problem. But whenever I leave the team, I leave Microsoft. I don't have any plans. Don't worry. Whenever something happens, suddenly we have to scramble, find someone else an account or whatnot, or I don't know. So it's just not ideal. And suddenly, and then also the app is still in my account, right? I think maybe it's not even possible to transfer it to another account. So all kind of weird stuff. Possible weird stuff going on there, which is also kind of like, I definitely appreciate the offer from Gustavo here. Like, hey, I want to do it on my account. But if 5 people are going to do that, we have suddenly 5 apps who are probably in different stages of the community toolkit. So we have 5 apps who are different, which is not really great for the image of the toolkit, right? One might crash because one is not maintained anymore. So that's not great either. Kind of like whenever you have NuGet packages re-uploaded also from other sources, right? Which is also very confusing always. So I definitely, again, I appreciate the offer, but that's not something I think we should want as well. So if we have some kind of pipeline or whatever, or account that we can just pull in, and that will be refreshed for us by other people looking at that, being paid for whatever. If we could use that, I say we do it. But otherwise, it's just a lot to consider to do such a small thing, you would say, from the outside. But there's a lot to consider here.
Definitely a lot of work. Yeah, I'd say maybe we take 2 action items out of this. One being, Gerald, we can reach out to the WinUI team, and probably after build. Like we're all working very hard right now at Microsoft to get ready for the conference this month. So yeah, maybe next month, since build is I think the last week in May, so the first week in June, we can reach out. The Windows Community Toolkit team certainly works closely with the WinUI team, and maybe we can circle up and chat about what their process is. I will say if their process is, oh yeah, we just pay a team of 6 people and this is all they do, then, well, I mean, I guess if we had 6 volunteers that wanted to do it and become Community Toolkit App Store core maintainers, that's certainly an option. But yeah, if it's not too much work and they figured out a way to script all the stuff, do it in CI, CD, maybe we could even bring in Gustavo and he could own it as a maintainer. So I see some possibilities, but yeah, my concern is just the amount of work.
Probably, first of all, we need to create a working application, and it should look like it's a so people should like it and want to install it, and not just see that we have it and that's it. Yeah, they
True.
should probably enjoy our application.
Yeah, like throw some animations in there, maybe some icons,
Yeah.
and a color palette.
I'm
right,
wondering
so
if there might be a kind of a little bit of a halfway house if you can't, like, if you say that the WinUI team has a team of people that do this, because a lot of the content looks fairly similar to documentation. Whether there is almost a way that, I'm not saying we host, well, maybe we could stick a web view in and host the docs side by side, something like that to kind of, we've already created some of this content, and actually maybe the app, because actually I think a topic of discussion a little bit later on is C# examples for the docs or a sample application. But if we could try to minimize the amount of effort in terms of providing as much as we possibly can, so if you can have sample app looking a little bit tidier with the documentation alongside it, whether we can pull that in from the CI, I don't know. Obviously that complicates if it's in a different repository, but
it's a cool idea. I mean, GitHub's got APIs. We could always do that. I'm very familiar with GitHub APIs, thanks to the #1 best-selling app, Git Trends. Download it today.
All right. So yeah, I noticed there's a question in the chat from Luca, who asked something like, "Do we have API for push notifications that can be used for all platforms in the toolkits?" No, because push notifications are hard. So there's a couple of plugins out there who kind of do something with that. I think ideally, we want to pull that in somewhere, but like I said, it's hard to unify that across all the platforms. But then actually, indeed, Pedro was responding to that, and Pedro isn't here today because of reasons. He couldn't join us today. So Pedro is joining us in the chat. He's not on camera, but he is ready for you to answer some questions in the chat. So Pedro, we hope to see you again next month. Absolutely, that's what happened to Pedro. I think we said all about the sample app things here. I think, well, maybe one last thing, Sean. I thought we were going to go with the route like, hey, maybe we can put it in like, App Center distribute or something like that. I think Essentials did it at some point, but that's also like, it's a good option for like Android. You can even, for Android, you could say, hey, here's the APK, just do your thing. But for iOS, not so much. Again, complicated process. So. For iOS, you would still kind of like need an account again and whatever. So that's not really an ideal. Yeah, that's not really an ideal option as well. Okay, so I think next thing on the thing, Vlad, you also wanted to discuss something about remove methods which duplicates .NET MAUI methods, which seems like cleaning up code that we are duplicating across projects, and we shouldn't do that. So, what's this all about?
As I fetched a screenshot, as you can see, some of methods which we previously had in Community Toolkit extensions are already a part of .NET MAUI. As an example, I found the color extensions where you can see RGBA hex of .NET MAUI. We had the same implementation to RGBA string. So it's partially done. We had a big pull request for that where we replaced all, let's say, duplicated methods and also fixed some bugs. For example, like we had RGBA string, but we tried to parse it as RGBA. So it's good that we re-review our code before our release. Yeah, but if you find something similar which is already a part of .NET MAUI, so probably even during reviewing the code or writing something new, I think we should remove it because there was a small discussion, and first we think that we can mark it as with obsolete attribute, but releasing our like new package with some obsolete APIs maybe not a good idea. So probably we should review our code and see, especially extension methods. If we find something which is already implemented by the .NET MAUI team, we probably need to remove it from our MAUI package, MAUI toolkit.
Yeah. Well, this was a fun one because it was, well, we're in our release candidate phase. So we have frozen our APIs and we said, we're not going to add or remove any features. And then this popped up and it was like, oh, shoot. Well, that would mean we have to remove a feature. But in this case, these methods are already in .NET MAUI. So yeah, we kind of made the decision like, okay, yeah, let's go ahead and remove them, even though we're in an RC, because we're not taking away any functionality. And yeah, you'll see a red squiggle if you had it in your app. But if you use IntelliSense, like Vlad's showing here in the screenshot, you'll quickly see that, like, if you just type in 2 RGBA hex, well, all those letters exist in the same method name. They're moved around a little bit in .NET MAUI, but it seemed like a pretty easy discoverability. So yes, we're in RC, and yes, we just removed some features from our toolkit, but it's essentially because they've been promoted into .NET MAUI. These were in Xamarin forms. And so that's just why we had in the Xamarin Community Toolkit. But here we are.
And as correctly you mentioned that we didn't remove the functionality, like we didn't remove, it was a part of the converter. And we didn't remove that converter because we need converters. We just reuse the .NET MAUI implementation inside of it, and we return exactly the same string, just to remove our extension method.
Yep. So life happens. We make our own rules. No, so this is definitely, you know, we try to stick to like kind of the unwritten rules for RCs and that kind of stuff. But in this case, like Brandon said, we are not really taking away anything. You know, and should we then take on the burden of like obsoleting it with a message like, hey, first transfer everything to .NET MAUI methods, and then for the next release we have to remember like, oh yeah, we need to take those out. So you know, for something that's like kind of small, to be honest, you know, the preview versions especially are not downloaded that much yet, so the chances that people are actually using this very actively aren't that high. And also, you know, the people who are kind of like early adopters are usually also the people who kind of like follow all the development and will see how this happened and see this video. They're all here. So, you know, they will know that we removed them and everything should be good. The other ones are definitely easy discoverable. So I would say right call, but we made the call. So, you know, it's weird to say we did a weird thing. Anyway, moving on. Vlad, you keep on talking. You have so many discussions. What is new dialog controls? I don't know anything about this, to be honest.
Yeah. This idea came to me when I implemented my Paint application, and it's actually using the drawing view. And I found that I am not able to use like open directory I cannot choose directory, and I can to save file, and I can choose directory, for example, open something, for example, one directory and see all files there. And if you remember Windows Forms, you probably see that it contains some save file dialog and open file dialog. And this functionality mostly related and probably should be as part of MAUI Essentials, but you know, it's easier for us to like create it, make it stable, and then promote it to MAUI Essentials. And how it looks like, for example, here we can open something, we can choose some file, and here we are.
Yay.
Yeah.
Did you draw that yourself?
Yeah.
That's really good.
And for example, the same happens for save, where we can choose the directory where we want to save some files. It's already similar API. It calls file picker, where we can choose our files, and it can be the same for folders, and the same for like save file dialog, save whatever name we choose. So that is my proposal and idea.
Yeah, it's cool. So how does that look on mobile? Because you showed it on Windows just now, and it's pretty easy to visualize something similar on Mac. What are those prompts on iOS and Android?
Yeah, let me show my third pane application, especially for Android. Just a second, it starts. So it should use default file system, default file browser. And for example, here, when we click open, it shows this dialog where we can choose some files we can save, and it opens. When we click save, it opens the same dialog where we can choose something.
Whoa, is that custom? Or is that, are we on Android?
Yeah, as for this one, it's a custom implementation because
okay.
Yeah, I didn't find a folder picker as well in Android. It opens, it shows me default browser, file browser, file explorer, and I can choose files that, but probably it's not working in this emulator. But I wasn't able to get a feedback from that application to this one. So that is why I created something like that.
So for the people who might be confused here, Vlad is showing this. It looks like a Windows application, but he's running this through Windows subsystem for Android or Android subsystem for Windows. I always mix up how the order should be, but that allows you to run Android applications from Windows. So while this looks like a Windows application on Windows 10 and Windows 11, I think both, or at least Windows 11, you can, I think it's still in preview, run Android applications like straight from Windows as if it were Windows application. So that's why we are actually looking at an Android application, but it might look like a Windows application. Yeah, that was exactly my question, Brendan. Like, hey, is this something custom? Is this something that is built into Android? Because I couldn't remember that this was a thing. So yeah, that was my exact question. Like, how does this work on mobile? And also, like for this one, for the open one, how is this different from the file picker? Because the file picker is already in Essentials, right? So how is this different from that?
File picker allows you to open exactly when you choose a file. When I click on folder, it just opens that folder and doesn't show me, and it asks me to choose a file. So if, for example, I need to choose a directory, it's especially for save, like when I choose, let's say, save, I am choosing not file, because file doesn't exist. I choose the directory.
Okay.
And yeah, and then I click save.
Does iOS let you do this? Because I know they sandbox each app. Like each app is a different user in Linux. And yeah, I'm curious, would the app even be able to see outside of its sandbox?
There is
I
the
think
Files
for-
app, isn't there?
Oh, yeah, exactly.
So that actually,
It's only for iOS.
yeah, the Apple app is the Files app, isn't it? Where you can store things and access them in other apps. So I'd be intrigued to see if we could utilize that if we're going to go down this route.
And I think also that has some implementation on the file picker for Essentials right now. And I'm not sure if this goes straight to iCloud or it gives some limited access to the file system. But there is something definitely possible there.
It could get messy. I mean, I could see, because this is definitely helpful, certainly for desktop. And I could, we haven't introduced any features that don't support all 4 platforms, iOS, Android, macOS, and Windows. But if we named this something like Desktop Directory Picker or whatever name, if we say this is just for desktop, I could see something like that going on. That also might buy us some time to figure out iOS stuff, since Apple likes to lock everything down. But yeah, no, I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued to see more. I didn't realize Android let the user see so much of the file structure. That's a little scary. You got a lot of power.
I think all platforms allow us to select the directory to save file, like export it. But as for like open folder, it's probably only for all platforms except the iOS.
Dang. Well,
I can just add that as far as I know, Apple allows to import file to the specific application, so you can reuse it, but it will be like a copy of the file, and only after that you can get an access to it.
Gotcha.
And the only kind of other concern is like, yes, like you said, Vlad, like ideally we want to bring this to essentials, but they are taking a little bit longer to add these kinds of things that maybe we do, which is also kind of like the idea of the toolkit, right? Let it land with us and then grow, and then grow up to be in the real toolkit, in the main .NET MAUI project. But we will have some time, I guess, where we have very similar functionality, maybe a little bit duplicate functionality even. So that would be my kind of like other concern. But sometimes for things to get better, I guess that might need to happen. So
yeah, and Pedro's chiming in. He says that it looks doable on iOS and Android. So yeah, maybe the first step is necessarily like before we open proposals and champion them and go through all that, is maybe just throw together a prototype. Maybe there's put it in your own personal GitHub repo. We let folks play around with it. There will be coming something called Community Toolkit Labs. It's not out yet, but should be coming soon. And that would also be a great spot for this, because Labs is meant to be like, let's play around with stuff as a community. And then once we've agreed on like, oh yeah, the API should look like this, and oh yeah, it works this way on mobile versus desktop, that's when get more formal process of opening proposals and stuff. But yeah, I think I'm most interested in just like, what's the experience like on iOS and Android, and also just what do they let us do?
Absolutely. But on the other hand, for desktops even, I think it adds a lot of value, because we, as the .NET MAUI team, we see a lot of kind of like new or renewed interest for especially Windows as a desktop platform now with .NET MAUI. So, and together with that, a lot of people, of course, saving and loading files and folders. That is something that you obviously very quickly do in a desktop environment. So I think it's definitely a good idea. But Vlad already seems to have somewhat of a prototype. So let's see how far we can take that and see from there, basically. All right, then I see Sean has something to say about adding C# samples, which is very generic. So let's add some C# samples everywhere.
I think this comes as part of with the effort that we've been putting into the doc site. We typically add a XAML example, then ideally a verbose C# example to then show off how the markup package simplifies that C#. I think Cliff has mentioned while he's been helping us on the docs, which has been a great effort, that we don't have anywhere to source this example from, so we're having to build the C# ourselves. So I think the question kind of is around whether we can have an easier place to maintain the samples for the docs, whether that's in the form of an application that we can then, in theory, copy and paste to the docs, or I don't know if there are better suggestions. I think we're kind of at the exploration phase of how we can provide as many samples and documentation as we can, and obviously then control the amount of effort that we're putting into this, because we don't want to be spending all of our time maintaining.
Yeah, I think this kind of like hooks back into like the sample app, right? And that's also something I think we discussed at some point for a .NET MAUI sample app. Kind of like there we are in kind of like the same situation, right? We have this amazing stuff. Maybe we actually have a sample app that kind of like doubles as a app that we try to reproduce issues in, that we test with, etc., etc. So how cool would it be if we could put that in the store and have a showcase like, hey, this is all the stuff that's in there. But ideally, I think like Telerik, maybe they pull it out of the store, I don't know. And maybe the other component vendors as well. I think I've seen them have had apps in the store where you could not only like see what they do, but at the very least, you could also see like the XAML or the code or whatever that is used to actually render the thing you're looking at, right? Or maybe even change it a little bit, and that will be changed automatically in the running app as well. But that would be maybe taking it a step too far. So ideally, if you want to have some kind of sample app, then you would include also, maybe that in some kind of tab where you say, hey, this is the running example. This is the XAML that you need for it. This is the C# code, and this is the C# markup code that you need for it. So, but again, that will be like a big effort to etch out all the different examples, make sure that they work 100%. And then if you go change one little thing in the XAML, make sure that you update all the other bits. So yeah, that's definitely a, what is it, triplication of the efforts here. So yeah, I think I would definitely love to have this, but it's also a lot of work.
Yeah, I can see a couple paths for us. I mean, Sean has done an awesome job of making sure every sample in the docs has a C# sample along with a C# markup sample. So there's definitely one path that says like, we already got it in the docs. Do we really need it again in the code base? I could see another path where, kind of like we do for every pull request nowadays, we say, hey, this pull request needs to have a sample and it needs to have a unit test. We would just add that as a second, I guess it'd be a third requirement. So XAML sample, C# sample, unit test. Or, and this might be, I don't know about the easiest, but we do have the C#, the MAUI markup sample app. Right now, that sample app is very different from the .NET MAUI Community Toolkit sample app. The .NET MAUI Community Toolkit sample app has like a page for every feature. It's very structured. When this is my fault, because when I made the markup sample app, I just copy pasted an app that I had already done using the C# markup extensions. And we've just kind of been building on that. So it's more of like I'll say a real app. I mean, you probably could push it to the App Store. It's good enough, but it's more of like a real app than it is the galleries that we have for the .NET MAUI app. So yeah, that third path could be the C# markup sample app essentially mimics the .NET MAUI Community Toolkit sample app, but obviously everything would be done in C#. So that would add a little bit of complication, because then any new feature we add to the MAUI Community Toolkit sample app would also have to be added to the MAUI Markup Community Toolkit sample app, and there are different repos, so we just gotta like stay on top of that. But those are kind of the three paths I see. So it's either like we say, it's already in the docs, we're good, or we require it going forward for every new pull request in the current .NET MAUI Community Toolkit, or we require it for every pull request coming in that user then goes to the MAUI markup Community Toolkit and opens up a sample there. Whew.
I think the final one would probably be a step too far in the fact that we already require a PR to the docs as well. So we're effectively requiring 3 PRs.
There's some overhead, yeah.
I'm almost tempted to say 1 is the easiest by not doing anything. I mean, it'll be interesting to see what comes out of the discussion around how we improve the sample app, because that might give us room for being able to expose bits there. I don't know. Like we say, how the WinUI stuff actually shows you how everything's built in the application itself.
Yeah. So maybe this kind of gets paused along with the sample app store discussion until we circle up the WinUI team and see how they're doing it, and maybe there's some secret that they can teach us. But
Maybe we even create a new sample application, and especially for C# examples, and it may not be equal to our current XAML application, but we can add it one by one later. So in that case, we do not need to create multiple repositories, multiple PRs to different repositories. They can go exactly in the same repo.
Actually, that's a good point, because a lot of this stuff, so like a converter is a converter, right? And if we have one sample in C# of how to use a converter, like it's super easy with the C#, the MAUI markup NuGet package. Maybe that's enough. And we have one C# sample of here's how you would add a behavior. And now that I'm saying this, that could all just be in one page. But
This actually might come on to another discussion we probably should have at some point. It's come from chatting to David Britch of the Microsoft Docs side, in the fact that I think what the preferred approach is, we describe a concept, like you're saying, is this is a converter, this is what a converter does, this is how you would use it. 1 XAML, 1 C#, 1 markup, however. And then the rest ships into API docs. So that's auto-generated based off our XML documentation. Typically, though, I think they still ship with some level of examples in their API docs. So we might still just be moving some of the responsibility over to whoever maintains the XML documentation.
true. And I will say, stay tuned for auto-generated API docs. I'm going to spin up that conversation next month. So after build, we'll start working towards that. And that's going to be fun, because it's all the toolkits together. So we've got to figure out how to generate the APIs for the MVVM toolkit, the .NET toolkit, the .NET MAUI toolkit, the MAUI markup tool. So it'll be a whole adventure that we didn't want to get into before we GA.
Or not at all, but we have to.
Or I didn't want to get into it.
All right, quickly, we're quickly running out of time. So, Sean, you had one other thing about GitHub Docs previews. What's that all about? I have some idea.
Just wanted to make a mention of the previews. Oh, sorry. So this has purely come down to the fact that you indent your code nicely in Visual Studio Code, send it up to GitHub, and then when you actually start to preview, if you're not a full-time employee, then reviewing a docs PR becomes a little bit more difficult, because you're viewing how the Markdown renders in GitHub, and that doesn't strictly render how you've written it in your editor. I think I showed you an example, or you reviewed one for me this morning, didn't you, Gerald, in the fact that the indentation was all off, but it renders fine in the website. It's just whether we can get to a stage of simplifying the review process. There you go. See, so label.setBinding there is off to the right. But if you actually view that doc page, it renders fine.
Is that something we need to be worried about since it renders fine?
I don't know.
Well,
It might be fine.
no, I don't think
Or
not
something that
really,
could
but
blow
kind
up
of
on
like
something
the
later.
yeah, and the kind of like the problem is when I first noticed it, I started to do like the suggestion feature on GitHub. Like, hey, remove them all, and it looked nice on GitHub. So, and I was confident that it was looking okay. So, didn't check the preview. Who does that? It's kind of like testing. You don't need to do that. So, I submitted that stuff, and then I don't know, for some reason I checked or someone else did and said like, hey, but this doesn't look right on the actual published docs, right? So, I could go undo all those things again. But kind of like the problem is I could check both, like Sean says, like, if you are a employee at Microsoft, you can check the previews. So for the people who are not aware, if you're working on the docs and you make a PR, there is a bot that will go generate a preview page of how it will look like whenever it's published on the actual docs.microsoft.com. So there's a link, but you have to log into that link. So only Microsoft employees can access that link. So whenever you're an outside contributor, like Sean is, like, to us, he's the core maintainer, but he's outside of Microsoft. He can't check that link, so he has to kind of like check in GitHub, and in GitHub, then the indentation is off, but he has no way of telling if it will be off in the actual published website, yes or no. So yeah, do we really need to, or do we just live with like, hey, I think at some point there was talk of maybe opening up that a little bit, that outside people could also, or selected outside people could access those previews. Do I
I
remember
don't
that
know.
correctly?
I know
Oh.
that ultimately, or maybe the previews might change. That's possible. I know the fact that you guys have to take responsibility of hitting the merge button, which is perfectly acceptable. So,
And that's there too, right? We have to merge it anyway. So this just should be something that we should check then, I guess, which is mostly me. So I should just do a better job. That's basically
no,
conclusion.
it's not that. I'm just wondering if you can reduce any level of friction in the fact that what you see there is what you're going to get on the page, and
Yeah,
you almost
or is
don't
there
have
like
to think about it too much.
Yeah, is there like a .NET format kind of thing that we could have a GitHub action run to clean it up? I don't know.
I could take a look. I did find that Visual Studio Code has you can have an extension that then can utilize dot editor config files, so then you can control the indentation. But that's obviously extra setup.
Speaking of which, are you using that one? Maybe we should take this offline, but are you using that one? We have like the Microsoft Docs authoring extension for Visual Studio Code, right? Oh, did you need to log in for that as well?
I haven't installed that. Maybe that's my fault.
What? Yes, you should get that. I think at least I can. I'm not sure if you need to be logged in for that as a Microsoft employee as well, but with that, you could definitely also get that preview. It will do some generation for you, and it will get that. So that might be definitely something to worth to check out as well. So that might be the solution to this whole problem.
Yeah, shoot that link over to Sean Gerald and see if he can install it without needing to be an employee.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, we could add that to like our contribution requirements or contributing guidelines, whatever we call them.
Exactly. Let's do that. All right. Well, I'm going to do that. Before that, I'm going to send you off talking about the V next milestone. So, Brandon, take us away with what's coming in future versions.
So, this isn't final by any means, and I literally just created V1.1.1 this morning. So this is very hot off the presses, but I did want to share and announce to the community that we are looking ahead. We are in the feature freeze right now. We're still catching up on some docs and some unit tests, and that'll be our main focus until we move the .NET MAUI Community Toolkits out of preview later this month. But once that happens, what proposals are we going to work on next? And so we've already had Vlad volunteered, said he would love to bring in Expander. Pedro volunteered to bring in, well, the name is going to change. Right now we have it icon tint color effect. Long story short, we're going to, anything that was an effect in, say, Xamarin Community Toolkit, we're going to make that a behavior in .NET MAUI going forward. It's the .NET MAUI way of doing things. If you haven't heard yet, effects are doable and they're still available to be used and consumed in .NET MAUI, but you don't really need to. That was more of like a need that arose out of Xamarin Forms' architecture, which is where effects came from. So yeah, so just wanted to get this out there to the community and wanted to ask, let us know. We've got a bunch of open proposals here. Well, actually, those are bugs. But if we get past the bugs, we got a bunch of open proposals. Some of these are obviously easier to do than others. I know, like, Pedro's already working on camera view as well. He's been very busy. But yeah, chime in, let us know. And we can use that to prioritize our next milestone as well. So everything is essentially up for grabs as well. So anything, let me go back, with a help wanted tag on it, you can actually come in here and search on the tag. So if you click on a help wanted tag, you can see all these proposals where we want your help. And we would love the assistance because, none of us get paid to do this. We're all volunteers. And it's for the community, by the community. So we love it when all the folks from the community chime in and jump in and open up pull requests. So yeah, just let us know. You can comment on any of these and say, hey, Gerald, I want to do semantic order view. And Gerald will assign it to you. No problem. So yes, version 1.1.0 is already being discussed. Come join the conversation so that we can help make sure we get what you need. Or if you have cool stuff that you can add in, bring that in too, because that's even easier.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I just saw it scrolling by. I've seen a couple of people who were asking about the tab view, I think specifically, which is something that a lot of people seem to use. So, it's going to come, but like Brendan just said, we're also doing this in our spare time, in our free time outside of our day jobs. So, our answer is always kind of like along the lines of, sure, it's going to come. We don't know when. But, if you really need it, if this is something that you really want to have, if this is something that your project depends upon, please consider contributing to the community toolkit as well. I mean, basically all the code is there. You need to reformat it a little bit, shuffle it a little bit to make it .NET MAUI compatible. And, then we can go a long way. But we're all doing this together. So if this is something that you're really waiting for, consider donating some of your time and efforts into this project as well. And a lot of other people who are also asking for it might be very grateful that you have actually done so and you're not stuck waiting for us, basically.
Absolutely.
And I think we're actually on time. We discussed everything that we wanted to discuss. This is a first. So we're finally, after how many times did we do this? 6 times. We finally got it down how to actually do this. I think there's not really much questions in the chat. If you have any questions, do it right now very quickly because we have a couple of minutes left. Yeah, and else, I think I'm just going to, say goodbye for now. We're going to do this again next month. We should have a GA version for you then. So maybe, little celebration then. Get out your little flags and wave with something and, I don't know, something like that. Do something funny.
Yeah.
All right.
Put on
questions.
Best Maui attire.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Sean.
That's good. Sean.
Sean.
Sorry,
Sean's
I was off
great.
looking at this docs author stuff.
Very good. Very good. So for the people who are missing out, we still got a couple of minutes anyway. Sean did his session and he was in full Maui, so Hawaii Maui outfit with like a lei and snorkeling goggles and whatnot. So it was a good, fun thing to see. So go look that up. Go check out that session of snorkeling in Maui. I think it was called the Telerik event from our friends at Telerik. So definitely go check that out. I don't see any questions, so I'm going to say, thank you everyone for joining this month again. I hope this was a great update for you. We're working hard to making this happen. Please join the conversation, join the contributions on our repository, and we'll be talking to you next month. Thank you, Vlad, Brandon, Sean. See you next time.
See you next
Bye.
month.
Thank you.